Thanks for joining us. This is The Economy. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. In my office right now is Christine Gadsby, the cybersecurity or the Chief Cybersecurity Officer of Blackberry. Very recently, Blackberry, in collaboration with Talent Corp, has launched their Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence at Cyberjaya, where they are going to partner with cybersecurity experts and trainers like SC2 as well as CompTIA to deliver about 1,000 talents to be trained in the cybersecurity space. As we have discussed on this show in previous episodes, cybersecurity roles are one of the more needed roles in the space of technology. So Christine is perhaps the best person to discuss this with us. I think the first thing that I want to ask you is, why Malaysia as opposed to other markets within the region? Where do you see Malaysia fit in that whole general idea or general strategy of Blackberry in promoting cybersecurity competency in this region?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, Malaysia is really unique in how it leads in the ASEAN region for cybersecurity. I think you have a really good combination of strong policy with the Malaysian cybersecurity strategy. You have the need and the want to train, and you see the priority of needing to train skilled people to do cybersecurity work, and you put that as a priority. And you know, you follow that up with things like driving towards digital sovereignty, a really strong economy when it comes to the needs of digital sovereignty. You take security just incredibly seriously. And you have had the forefront to think about partnering with enterprise companies who have the deep, already technical knowledge and are willing to pass that on, and willing to partner with Canada and have it be part of their own strategy in the Indo-Pacific region. So I think there's just a combination of really great things. Absolutely has put Malaysia in the forefront. We actually have put our Asian headquarters here as well, just to help bolster that partnership. So it's incredibly thought-leading in how to really tackle Malaysia's challenge with cybersecurity talent.
The thing about this part of the world is that we are at the crosshairs of the larger crosshair of China versus US. And consistent with the ASEAN non-intervention policy, we tend to not take sides and we tend to do business with everyone. Doesn't this kind of geopolitical element put a bit of a risk factor, at least, something for Blackberry to think about when you think about enlarging your business in this part of the world?
Yeah, another great question. I think anytime there is a geopolitical shift, or anytime there's a geopolitical tension where we feel it change, and you couple that with a digital transformation like this region is going through, you are going to cause a need for incredibly tighter security controls. Malaysia's done, again, a great job. I commend the Malaysian region for really answering that with policy. You've really stepped up and sort of written the rule book to drive a lot of the needed security changes, but absolutely, geopolitical weighs heavily on the need to do everything that you're doing. So
geopolitical stability, at least among partners of ASEAN, is indeed something of a high priority, but not many of these ASEAN leaders who are in town right now to talk about the ASEAN Summit really discuss cybersecurity as a top priority. I would not say, or I wouldn't go as far as saying that they wouldn't disagree that cybersecurity is not an important subject. It's just that there's so many other things that are put on the table for them to discuss and debate upon, leading to cybersecurity being one of the less important items. How do you see the talent development as well as the infrastructure and policy development of cybersecurity going to be upskilled amongst the countries here in this part of the world, considering that there's so many other pressing matters at hand that the leaders are thinking about right now?
You know, I think one of the things that is interesting in this region is that even though it tends to somewhat fall on a differing scale of the level of conversation, topic, hours of discussion, it's important to everybody. So no one will disagree. When I go around and talk to the different areas and regions of the ASEAN region, no one disagrees it's a priority. So I think it's just getting it into the right place where you can partner with companies like Blackberry and, again, you know, areas of the globe like Canada to have sort of an answer to that where we're strategizing together so that we can help you worry about it instead of you having to worry about it, et cetera, right? So I think it is a shared goal. And the leaders that I've spoken to take it very seriously. So I do think you'll see, especially as the tensions in the globe continue to increase, you're going to see the priority increase effectively because it almost has to.
So when you look at little bit of background is that you've been with Blackberry for close to 2 decades, and you've seen how it has been transformed from a rather retail company to an enterprise company leading to the cybersecurity world. You would know the progress of what things have been developing. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a crystal ball insight into what it's going to look like for the next 3 to 5 years, and perhaps what countries and companies must be thinking about right now in order for them to be able to skate where the puck is, so to speak.
Yeah, the biggest shift we are seeing right now is really the challenge around securing communications. If you think about the geopolitical shift, we are a supply chain. You know, we as humans are people talking on our phones, we're on our devices, we're entering in things to a computer web browser. We become a supply chain of information that criminals find very valuable. And secure communications is definitely being pointed out as a weak link. We've got probably 3 or 4 really major areas of that, and that is one, AI is really developing a criminal toolkit. You know, it makes it much easier for them to intercept communications like this and use the data that they're finding. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is you have this really free supply chain. Everybody is using free applications. You know, we're all using them, whether it's WhatsApp or Signal. We're having these government-grade conversations on them. We know that we are, with classified, confidential, secret information that is being passed around in these free applications that we know all of that metadata is available for. So it is public knowledge that that metadata is collected and sold, and attackers have access, again, through AI, making it much easier. But it's also, the barrier to entry is very low. It's a very low cost for an attacker to go hire a service. They don't even have to do anything.
Yeah.
For a cost of a muffin and a cup of coffee, an attacker can literally just go pay a service to go get access to all of that data. It's absolutely mind-blowing what we're seeing right now as far as intelligence. So I think those two things are really what is really going to harness the higher level, as you say, priority conversations are going to be when we find more human error, accidentally adding people to conversations that are private.
When you said Signal, that's the only thing that I was thinking of.
Right. Well, I mean,
and the guy just stayed silent, and it was just awesome. The whole thing was just awesome.
But you see that happening, and that's not the first time, and it won't be the last time. It's just the first time you heard about it.
Sorry, Christine, that wasn't even an attacker, so to speak. It was just a guy that was invited in. That's it.
And that is human error. So you've got AI driving the attacker scenario. You've got human error, right? And there is a place for free, messaging apps. If I'm gonna, I'm stopping by the grocery store and I'm gonna pick up dinner.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, fine, right?
Yeah.
But highly regulated business, banking, government, that is not the place for those conversations, and we continually see that.
I would like to argue that human nature or psychology actually dictates that it's only natural for one person to just continue on staying on that platform and not migrate to another platform. And then, you extrapolate this with other actors within the same organization. They just wouldn't want to leave, say, WhatsApp and move on to other secured channels. It's just human behavior.
It is, but the one thing when you do the government-grade application like we have at Blackberry, you have the ability to control the administration of it. So, for example, a WhatsApp application, you can go download that from your app store. Everybody can. But if I administer a controlled communications platform, I have to invite you from my administration platform.
No.
So, you can't add it to have a conversation with me if the company didn't allow that.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that, I guess the question now is on enforcement and how does organizations impose on that enforcement to use. I mean, I can't imagine any government-grade organization saying things like, by all means, use a free, text message or whatever.
Sure.
But it starts from the top, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. And you have to get into the bigger conversation of what does mobile device management look like.
Yeah.
If you're allowing employees to have access to mobile devices, then it needs to start there.
Yeah.
And not the conversation. You can have a policy, what you're saying, and you can say, okay, please don't use these.
There, and it has been there.
Right, it's always been there. But you really do have to start with mobile device management then and somewhat control that. But we do see when we do control that access, the security flows regularly, and it is what it's supposed to be. But what we do see also when there's no control, secrets are everywhere. And again, it's like $5 a month, an attacker can go pay a service. They don't even have to do anything. So I do think it needs to have a deeper conversation. But when it does have a deeper conversation, the priority does come up. So it is a good thing. We're seeing it here in Malaysia. Malaysia is using this currently, the secure services that we have, and we're seeing much tighter control over, confidential information, whether it's being shared between you and I, or enterprise and government, it is working. So you just have to, again, you just have to kind of prioritize it.
Your local partner here is Talent Corp. Based on the conversation that my organization, SM Praju, has had with Talent Corp, they argue that anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 jobs are going to be displaced because of AI disruption. Of that, more than half is going to be in the roles or in the aspects of cybersecurity. How do you tie this with talent management or resource management capability and readiness? And where do you see us closing that gap even further? I'm sure that by launching a Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence can actually close that gap somewhat, but I cannot imagine that one Centre of Excellence can close 300,000 roles in the space, I don't know, of 1 year or so on. So how do you see countries or companies close that gap even further?
We have to get creative in how you hire. This is a big effort, and it's not just in this region, it's an effort globally, but we have to definitely get creative on where we find the pools of talent. There are a lot of untapped areas. I think, when I think of this region especially, I think of like retired law enforcement who might be ready to go back into the workforce, right? They've already spent their career maybe investigating criminals.
They're driving Ubers, by the way, right now.
Right. Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we bring them back in. There are, in where I'm from, a lot of stay-at-home moms coming back into the workforce that are saying, "Hey, this is a great area. How do I learn?"
Yeah.
Even I have a daughter who's neurodiverse, and she's disabled. She's autistic, but she reads patterns. So even going into that community and saying, "Okay, these people are great at reading patterns. Maybe they love to do it," and she also actually really does like to sit and kind of have a repetitive task.
Yeah.
We haven't yet tapped that market. We're just starting to tap that market of individuals.
Sorry, I just have to intervene. So the SM Praju has worked with PwC, the audit firm, to collaborate a neurodiversity center of excellence to train and hire and appreciate more neurodiverse folks in order for them to recognize patterns. But baby steps.
Baby steps.
It's just 5 hirees per year or something like that.
But that's okay, because it creates a pattern that can be repeated when it's successful, right?
Yeah.
Once we have a model for that sort of thing and it can be proven, it will be adopted. I think it's really tough to get stuff like that off the ground. Like you're saying, someone has to really want to do that.
And strangely enough, it's PwC Texas that taught Petronas on creating that neurodiversity Center of Excellence, and seeing somebody from, I guess, Texas saying this again.
That's what I'm referring. So yes, absolutely. It does work. We are trying to prove the model that it works. I do believe it will be successful. I've seen it successful in my own life. So we have to get creative and go find the talent.
I mean, when HR departments interview people, they look for people that can communicate clearly, can collaborate with teams. I don't think these are the markers for having strong neurodiversity.
But I don't agree that every role needs that.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. I'm sorry. We have to be, one of the things that we have to change as an industry is we have to stop putting markers on roles like that.
Yeah.
Lots of roles we don't need people to have a degree in this and a degree in this and a degree in this, and we have to stop asking for it, because we also, not only do we not need it, we discourage people from applying. Because then people look at it and they think, well, I can't do that. That is
and then, of course, there's an exclusion risk, because the people or talents that you need would be in the neurodiversity background.
Exactly. And if we want to really have inclusion built into that, you're limiting those people right out of the get-go. So
now we're leaving cybersecurity. We're now talking about hiring, managing, trying to understand, of course, HR departments only react towards what the top thinks, and if the top doesn't think this way, it's very hard for organizations to adopt. Do you feel that a lot needs to be done in terms of training the C-suiters and the government policymakers and so on?
100%. And this, I did a couple of years ago, I went around and I did a bunch of, with my own friendly CEOs, I know quite a few people who run companies, and I started asking them, and it was to prepare for a conference that I was presenting on this topic, a talk on. And I asked them, how many of you have this, a priority of hiring neurodiverse, more women, more differently abled?
Women,
How much a priority? And every one of them, without a doubt, oh, it's so important, right? So then I followed up with the question, okay, well, what are you doing to, and it was crickets, because they realized that, yeah, it's so important. Well, what are you actually doing, though, to change the dynamic? They're not doing anything. I mean, most of them, a couple of them had to I do these really tiny things. But what I realized in that was that we lack implementation and actually dedication of time, resources, ability to be intentional. It has to be intentional. You can't just say you want to do it. You then have to turn around and go do something about it. And so my follow-up question to all these leaders, do you know how to do any of this? Hands
I don't
down,
think,
no.
yeah.
Hands down, no. None of them knew, and none of their HR people were training them in their own leadership development. In their own leadership development courses, there weren't any. They didn't know what to do. So I started with some basics with some of them, but it really hit me hard that it isn't that they don't want to be intentional. They just don't know how to be intentional. And so we really have to change the dynamic and have the C-suite be more intentional to realize this skill gap isn't going to get closed.
Yeah, but Blackberry is having a strong competency in the training aspect, but I don't know whether you have the competencies or the wherewithal to move into this whole changing the culture of how business should be. How do you bridge that gap between the things that you're good at and the things that needs to be done? Is there a middling gap there?
Well, that's why we partner with others, right? We aren't the answer for everything. We want to be a part of the dynamic of changing the culture. And so we have to partner with other people. And so that's why we've done this. You know, we're here partnering internally with Malaysia. We're partnering with other training partners. You know, what we're really good at is delivering 40 years of security excellence and products that do security really well and thought leadership. We have been training in security for a very long time. So we can bring the thought leadership, but we definitely, for scalability, have to have partners. We can't do it alone.
The next stage of conversation I would like to explore is in terms of the technical trainings that is currently being done, either in the Centre of Excellence that you have here or somewhere that you've done globally. What will be some of the areas of concerns that needs to be addressed, particularly in the aspect of the technical training aspect of it?
So I think training is interesting. It's sort of end-to-end. There's this really lower level basic cyber hygiene pool that just needs to happen. And that we can talk about just that pool of, I need to understand the basics of security. I see in the future at some point where companies will probably have to require that of all their employees. It won't just be, I want a career in cybersecurity. It will be really, to work for this company, you need to understand password resets and, you know, just basic cyber hygiene. Don't put your credentials into this web thing that you clicked on. You know, that kind of thing, I believe, will have to be table stakes, right? So we've got that all the way into really tough practitioner. You know, we just launched a ISSP program, things like that, where we're really going into some of the more certification roles and the more technical roles. But I don't see anything off the table for education. It's all got to have to be there because security is changing so much.
I'm sorry, I have a 73-year-old mom and an 11-year-old daughter.
I was gonna bring that up too. My parents and my kids.
Yeah, and the millennials are bridging the gaps of these two worlds. It's just bizarre.
It is, but even them, right? There is a need, and I was thinking about this on the flight on the way over. How do we make education programs? I mean, you know, how does anybody make education programs?
I'm not too concerned about my 11-year-old daughter.
It's my parents. My parents, I don't want them to lose their fortune, right? So, but how do we do that? We have to go lean in with the people that understand that group. And so that's kind of the thing is, I could tell you all day that it's really important to train your 73-year-old mom, but I'm not the one to put that training together. Who is the, you know, probably that needs a working group of, like, you know, doctors that understand that, you know, psychologists that understand how they think, you know, maybe the memory care people that understand what they can, patterns they can remember. It needs a think tank, and that's where I think we're having to think differently about it is going to be key.
So Malaysia, as a government initiative, has organized various structures possible. We have the National Digital Department, we have the Ministry of Digital, we have a few others, including the MCMC, and I do believe that many of them are coming up, including the National AI Office. I'm sure that many of these kind of initiatives are there. I'm not too sure whether you're open to providing critique on how we do things. Perhaps a better way of asking is the best practices across the markets that you operate in. Where do you see them work well, and in markets where they do poorly? And how do we stack up against that kind of benchmarks?
Great question. I will tell you this region is absolutely hands down leading in how they're delivering the policy. No, this is the truth. You can look at, and I invite you to go look at globally how things like this are being implemented, because I do this all over, I mean,
I'm sure.
everybody all over the world.
Yeah.
I'm here once a quarter or so for a reason, and that's because the ASEAN region, particularly Malaysia, is the only place that I go where you have all hands working together towards the same goal. You go to other regions of the world and they're happy to write policy, but then they can't implement anything, or it takes forever to implement something because they're all arguing about it. Here it's a lot more synergy as far as you're going to be the, you know, leading in the ASEAN region alone, but also in Malaysia in particular. every time I come here, the conversation is always driven to the same goal. There isn't an influence of something that doesn't matter. It just seems to flow like that. So I do think it's critically important for Malaysia to keep going to prove that you can partner with enterprise, you can partner with other governments, you can lead in the region, because it is working.
But of course, ASEAN has markets where we are at different levels. And it's very hard to find a unifying factor, or at least across the board, to find a uniform policy that can be implemented as a whole, as a region. Do you see this as a crippling factor?
That's a global challenge. I call that watermarking and crosswalking of security controls. So this is it, because it gets really complicated. And if you think about this, every security control ever written around the globe might require something like people need to have background checks if they work in a company.
Yeah.
We'll just take that, because that would be everything, right?
Yeah.
We've got to keep track of that level of those background checks. Maybe they're looking for a criminal background, and maybe the next one is looking for how long have you lived at your address. Maybe the next one is looking for, what citizen are you of a country of. We have to watermark those and then crosswalk those across. That covers this policy, that covers this framework, that covers, how many of those. So it does get complicated very quickly. And it is messy because regions want different things. Nobody comes into this saying, hey, my shop that makes tires, rubber tires, has a way different set of security requirements than a bank.
Yeah.
The tire company wants to make the cheapest, best tire they can. The bank has a whole different level. Yeah. So how do you make those relative? So in reality, when you think about things like that, they'll never be the same. They shouldn't be the same, but they have to work together. So there should be a low-level watermark of everybody should just have background checks, right? And then you can ratchet it up for how intense those get, based on the need of a tire manufacturer or a bank, right? So it is messy by design, but you harmonize well, and that's the critical point. You do a great job in this region of harmonizing that by industry, where I've seen that, it works well for you. It hasn't worked well in other parts of the globe. Yeah. So again, hats off to you for at least having the wherewithal to think about how to crosswalk those controls.
Working with China, does that add, I don't know, risk in terms of how companies should approach things?
The big thing with working anywhere in the globe is we have to pay attention to what's happening with security risk altogether. It doesn't matter who you're working with as far as where the doors are open. Because honestly, the bigger crime that we're seeing right now is borderless. It really, it's borderless. It doesn't really matter where it comes from. The impact is the same. What they're stealing is the same. The risk is the same. You don't want your conversations, you don't want espionage anywhere, let alone where it comes from. So it isn't really a regional barrier for me. It's just kind of looking at the whole risk of espionage. We're seeing it, so it's a big thing.
Finally, maybe in the next 3 to 4 minutes, I want to ask you about Blackberry itself. As a company, it's awesome. I love Blackberry. I think I got my first Blackberry Bold when I first started working, so that gives you a hint on how old I am. Blackberry Storm as well, my God. But yeah, how is Blackberry today, and how will Blackberry be, or what will Blackberry be in the next decade to come? So
Blackberry
and I watched the movie. I don't know whether...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Blackberry is a fascinating story to me still, and I've been, with Blackberry for a very long time. But, we do have 40 years of securing communications, which is amazing. And it's been awesome to see the transformation.
I just can't believe it. It's 40 years.
It is 40 years, right? And to see the transformation that this company has done, it's incredible to watch. But it just goes to show the power of that handset. Had a lot of stuff running inside of it, right? It was the mobile device, but had all that security software, and that's what people really wanted to keep, aside from the keyboard, which I can't comment on. But what really people...
But it was an enterprise-ready device.
People really wanted that level of maturity, and so what we did as a company is we took out all of that and made it available for everything, rather than just you had to have this phone. We still have all the platforms that were in the phone. They're just now software based. So you can still use our unified endpoint management, which is what controlled the handset itself. You've got our CCoE, which is the secure communications platform, which allows you to send encrypted. This is again government grade encryption, handing out ciphers at Starbucks encryption, because if it's not certified, you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Allows that for voice and for text messages and file sharing. So that's the second thing. And then we have ad hoc, which is critical events management. So natural disasters, which has been a big global issue, has been the typhoons, earthquakes, bridge collapses. We've seen it. That's a person management system where you can account for all of your employees. So, and then we still have the IoT side of the business, which is the, secure operating system that is in most of the vehicles that you drive. We secure stuff for all G7 governments and most of the G20, and NATO. So we're still that security company. It's just now it's software, which has been a fascinating ride to watch, just kind of that happen over the
ebb and flow and the transformation.
Yeah, and I predict that BlackBerry, over the next 5 years, will just continue to deepen in getting back to that root of we are the secure communications company, like we've always been. So I think we'll just kind of continue on that, and especially with regions like this that really want data sovereignty. It's very important.
A great way to end, I suppose. That was Christine Gadsby, the Vice President as well as the Chief Information Security Officer of BlackBerry. You can learn more about the security work that BlackBerry does on their website, or you can find out more with what's happening at the Cybersecurity Centre of Excellence at Cyberjaya at Talent Corp, as well as with us, yes, at Praju. Until then, thanks very much for watching. Catch you in the next one.